All right. So as you can see from working through those examples there, that combining ands and ors and doing a little creative thinking, you can come to some very complex decisions. And we'll be using ands and ors a lot for the rest of the semester. Anyway, lookups. H lookup, V lookup. V stands for vertical, H stands for horizontal. They both work the same except for one minor detail that we'll talk about in a second. But what they are is a way of getting around writing a long, complex if. So I've got a list of invoices here, the state the order came from, the amount of the order, and I want to apply sales tax. We talked about this one earlier in the semester, and I said I'll show you later how to deal with something complex like this without having to write a big if. That's where the lookups come in, all right? So on the next sheet over, I have a little table here that's arranged vertically, right? And it has the state abbreviation, and then the sales tax of, well, it's 6 months old. Last time I checked was last spring, but it's pretty current. And then the full state name, and then we have a shipping surcharge for states far out west, Alaska, Hawaii, California, that sort of stuff, okay? So there's a whole bunch of information here that we can use. So here, Kentucky, we don't want to have to say if the state is Alabama, this is the sales tax, and then if, right? That would take forever. So we're going to use a vertical lookup here, a V lookup to do that. So you just go V lookup. The lookup value, this is the thing that you want to reference that table with. So that would be the state abbreviation, so you just pick that. Then the table array is on the next page over, and just highlight, starting with Alabama, just highlight all 4 columns all the way down. And this would probably be a good place for a named range because we're going to be using this table over and over. Okay. And then the last piece of information you have to give it is which column the answer comes from. So this the abbreviation is column 1, the state sales tax is column 2, so on and so forth. So in this case, we want to get it from column 2. Okay. The thing you're looking for, the table it's supposed to look it up in, and then which column it'll get the answer from. Okay. The first column is the search column in these tables. It's just the way it's set up. It has to be set up that way. Is that everybody with me so far here? And then we're done, more or less. And it says, well, except it should be percent, not $6. So we'll just change it to percent, 6%, okay? All right, now, there's one thing we forgot to do here. Anybody remember what it is? What's that? You said it, I heard it. Absolute values, right? If we try to copy this thing down, this table is going to drift down and it's not going to be working. So again, you can just highlight that part of the formula and just do the F4 trick, and it puts $sign in front of everything for you automatically. Okay, it's a little bit of a time saver. Now I'm ready to copy that formula down. And I think I need to add a couple of decimal places to show the full sales tax. Okay? So then the surcharge, the 10% surcharge here, again, we would just do another VLOOKUP because our table is that vertical table, and we scan down through it. So you just go VLOOKUP, open parentheses. Again, it's the state abbreviation that we're looking for, comma, that table, and this is why I probably should have named this as a range, so I don't have to keep going back to this and highlighting this whole thing. Okay. Comma, and the surcharge is in 1, 2, 3, fourth column. Oh, and I forgot to do it again. And that's to make the table part, the table array, That part there, that absolute reference. Okay. Everybody with me here? So okay, now what we want to do next is we want to, that just says yes or no. And if it's yes, it's supposed to be a 10%, so we want to add that 10% on to the total. Okay. So I'm just going to create an extra column here for, I'm just going to break this up into parts for today. So here you would do something like this, right? Equals if this equals n, comma, then the amount plus the amount times 10%, right? Comma, else the amount, close parentheses. And then we can just copy that down. And we've added the surcharge on. All right. Now, if we want, you know, again, if we can do this professionally, we probably should round that off to the nearest penny, right? Or if you do this a lot, you might want to round everything up to the next whole penny, right? Because the customer's not going to, most customers won't notice that 0.5 of a cent. But if you add those up over thousands of orders, that's a fair amount of change, right? So in here, probably what we should do then is put a round, we can do this here, round up to the nearest 2 decimal places, like that. And so on, okay? So we can do stuff like that. All right, now the discount. Whoa, what happened to that row column? Okay. I forgot to add a column. Because there's supposed to be a, wait a minute, or is that on, oh, that's on the amount, right? Okay. So they get a discount. If they order, say, $100 to $299, $299.99 actually to be exact, we'll cut 1% off the bill. And if it's $300 to $599, they get 3% off, and so on. Is that all right? Everybody understand that part? Okay. Now, I can write that as an if statement, but I'm going to use a horizontal lookup here, just because I think they're easier to do than a long, complex if statement. So, but to do that, you have, just like you had to do with the if statement, you have to give it, you just give it the start point of each range. So here, this would be 0. This would be 100. This would be 300, and then 600, and 1,000. Okay. So we had to do a little work there. Okay, now go back to the lookup equals H lookup this time because that table's arranged horizontally. So you'd say H lookup, open parentheses, the amount, comma. Then on the sales text sheet, you'd pick both of those rows. First row is the search row, and then you can have as many answer rows as you want, comma. And in here, we want to get the answer out of the second row, so we put a 2 there. Close parentheses, and of course, again, the table reference should be an absolute reference, so we'll do that. And then there's our 1% discount or whatever. Okay. So really what we should do, okay, so then you'd have to write another, formula to take and apply that 1% against the total to get the true amount we should charge. All right? Which one? This one? This one? I just rounded up to the nearest penny. Because you can't charge, well, it's hard to charge a customer 247.596 cents or whatever. Okay? So, if we were an honest merchant, we'd round off to the nearest penny, but we just rounded up here. It's a classic scam. It's not a scam, but it's a classic business tactic. All right. So everybody got the general idea of how these look at this point, H lookup, V lookups, that sort of stuff. Okay, a couple of things you've got to be careful of. Let's start with the H lookup. How does that really work? We've turned to what's called a range lookup. So it takes that number, which was, in the first instance, it was $247, right? So it comes over here. Is 247 less than 0? No. Is 247 less than 100? No. Is it less than 300? Yes. So it backs up one, and it pulls the answer from whatever row you tell it to. That's how it works. Okay? Everybody understand that? Because this is where errors creep into these things. When you're doing what's called a range lookup, where you have ranges of stuff, not just categories, they must be in ascending order. If they're not, it will return wrong answers in certain places. Okay. So one of the things you have to do when you're doing these things, if you're doing a range lookup, make sure that the search column or the search row is in ascending order. Here's what's going to happen. So let's just say we had a typing mistake here, and this was 600 or 700, right? Somehow this got messed up, all right? So what's going to happen is, again, if it's like 600, it should come over here. Say they had $650 order, right? So legitimately, they should get a 6% discount, right? That's what it should have got. But what's going to happen, it's going to come here. It's going to start here. 650 is bigger. 650 is bigger. 650 is not bigger. So it's going to stop there and come back and put that answer in there. It's not going to give you an error message. It's going to give you wrong information. And then you've annoyed that customer because they should have got 5% bigger discount. So just a word of warning here. When you do range lookups like this, make sure they're in ascending order. Okay. Now, even when you're not doing a range, even when you're doing category lookups like this, or identical matches like this one, they must be in ascending order because it follows the same routine here. And what's happened is that some states aren't going to get charged the right sales tax because, for example, Arkansas is out of order. All right. So what's going to happen for people in Arkansas, they're going to be happy because it's going to come down here and say, wait, AR is bigger than AL. So when I say bigger here, I mean which comes first alphabetically and last, all right? So AR comes after AL, it comes after that. It doesn't come after that, so it'll back up one. It'll charge people from Arkansas 0 sales tax. So they're not in trouble, but we're going to be in trouble with the Department of Revenue in Arkansas. Well, actually, at some point we'll have to go back and bill them, and it's wrong. And it's going to cause problems for somebody. So again, you want to make sure that things are in ascending order, or it's not going to work right. The first column or the first row has to be in ascending order. Now, there's a workaround for this if you've got categories. And the other thing, by the way, you probably didn't notice that either, that down here, FA is not the abbreviation for Florida. FA is nothing. So there's a typo there. It should have been FL, but it gave you an answer. So when you do these lookup tables, you got to you want to spend a few minutes looking them over because it's so easy to introduce errors into your workbook. Okay. Again, this is why we talk about 50% error rate in spreadsheets. Okay. All right. So if you've got categories like this and you don't want to bother alphabetizing them, then what you can do here, there's an optional parameter called range lookup. The default is range lookup. So it just it assumes things are in a bucket. But if you do what's called an exact match, then I can just say false here. And that says keep going until you find an exact match or until you hit the end of the table. All right. So it'll just keep going down through there until it finds AR, and it'll stop right there, and we'll pull the answer from whatever column we tell it to. So now I don't have to bother having that thing alphabetized for it to work properly. Okay. So if you've got categories, like distinct categories like that, you can do an exact. If you've got ranges of numbers, then you have to do a range lookup, and then you have to be absolutely certain that things are in ascending order. Okay. So those are your two lookups. There's really no difference, again, HLOOKUP, because it's arranged horizontally, and a VLOOKUP. That's the only difference between those two. Everything else remains the same. All right? Questions about this? Okay, so you get on P3 your chance to play around with this. You're back to being a professor. You're going to curve the first exam. You're going to change that paper letter grade into a numeric equivalent, calculate an average for the course, and then assign a course grade using a lookup. Don't use an if there. Use a lookup. All right?